The Children's Act, psychological trauma, attachment styles and the cost of emotional suppression. Hi, I'm DrTonyWeston. Today we'll be exploring the Children's Act, a Netflix film that delves into complex emotional and ethical dilemmas. The movie centres around a judge, Fiona Maye, and a young boy, Adam, who is refusing life-saving medical treatment due to his religious beliefs. In this video we'll unpack the psychological, emotional, physical and behavioural issues that arise in the story. We'll explore key themes like psychological trauma, attachment styles, blunted trauma and the struggle to process emotions. Through this lens we can understand not just the characters but also our own emotional landscapes. Firstly, psychological and complex trauma. Let's begin by looking at Adam's situation through the lens of psychological and complex trauma. Adam is a young boy facing a life-threatening illness, but beyond the physical challenge, the decision to accept or refuse treatment becomes a source of deep emotional and psychological trauma. Complex trauma refers to the repeated cumulative impact of negative experiences over time, often beginning in childhood. For Adam, the trauma isn't just his illness, it's also the emotional turmoil of having his beliefs challenged, his autonomy questioned, and his future threatened. He clings to his religious identity as a way to create structure and meaning amidst the chaos. This is a common response to trauma. People often seek certainty and control when their world feels unstable. Blunted trauma and emotional suppression. Now let's shift our focus to Fiona, the judge. Unlike Adam, Fiona exhibits what we call blunted trauma. This form of trauma happens when a person repeatedly suppresses their emotional responses over time, often as a coping mechanism. In Fiona's case, she's built her entire career on the need to remain objective and detached, particularly in her role as a judge. Her job demands that she suppresses her emotional reactions to maintain fairness. However, this emotional suppression carries a psychological cost. We see her struggling in her personal relationships, particularly with her husband. Her blunted trauma leads to a kind of emotional numbness, where she can no longer connect deeply with the people around her. Over time, emotional repression can lead to burnout, dissatisfaction, and even a sense of isolation from oneself. Attachment styles and rejection sensitivity. One of the key psychological frameworks we can use to understand both Adam and Fiona is attachment theory. Attachment styles, which form in childhood, dictate how we relate to others. Adam, in his relationship with Fiona, displays traits of an insecure attachment style, likely anxious or avoidant. On one hand, he craves connection and approval from Fiona, almost idealising her. On the other hand, he fears rejection and struggles with being misunderstood, creating a deep sensitivity to any perceived abandonment. This is what we call rejection sensitivity, a heightened emotional response to the possibility of rejection. Fiona, meanwhile, seems to have developed an avoidant attachment style where she emotionally distances herself from others to protect herself from vulnerability. In her interactions with Adam and her husband, she maintains this emotional detachment, which serves as a shield against potential emotional pain. The learned ability to process emotions. A crucial element of both characters' stories is their inability to process emotions. Adam, despite his youth, is grappling with a world of adult emotions and responsibilities. He hasn't learned how to process these feelings in a healthy way, and we see him struggle between compliance and rebellion. Similarly, Fiona's detachment reveals a learned emotional suppression. Her years of holding back her emotions for the sake of her professional role have resulted in a detachment from her own emotional reality. When we suppress or ignore our emotions, they don't disappear. Instead, they show up in other ways like irritability, lack of fulfillment, or even physical symptoms like fatigue or tension. It's critical for emotional well-being not to just feel our emotions, but also understand them and process them in a healthy way. Moving toward healing. So what can we learn from Fiona and Adam's journey? Both are clearly affected by the trauma. Adam's complex trauma from his illness and Fiona's blunted trauma from years of emotional suppression. The first step toward healing for both characters and for any of us is recognising that these emotional wounds exist. When we identify patterns of emotional avoidance or hypersensitivity, we can begin to address them. Fiona, for instance, would benefit from allowing herself to be vulnerable, particularly in her personal relationships. Adam, on the other hand, would need help in learning how to navigate the emotional confusion of his situation, allowing him to process his feelings rather than being trapped by them. For all of us, healing involves acknowledging these emotional patterns and seeking help, whether through therapy, self-reflection or support from loved ones. In the Children Act, we witness the powerful interplay between trauma, attachment and emotional suppression. Both Adam and Fiona are products of their emotional environment, one struggling with overwhelming feeling, the other numbed by years of suppression. As we reflect on their stories, we could consider how these themes resonate in our own lives. Do we struggle to process our emotions? Do we detach from the people we care about to protect ourselves? Understanding these patterns is the first step toward healing. Thank you for joining me today as we explored the deep psychological and emotional currents running through this powerful film.